What up guys, SuperMetal983 here bringing us another CD review. And much like the Discarnate review that I did last year, we're going to be touching upon a 2017 release, and this is one that I barely even spoke to you about last year. It was one that was going to feature in my honourable mentions of last year, but it kind of whittled its way out of it. But I thought, you know what, I've been listening to it a lot lately, so let's get a CD review for it. So, yeah, as you can read by the title, this is what I'm going to be reviewing for you today. Yeah, this is the latest album from the band Suffocation, entitled Of the Dark Light. This is released under Nuclear Blast Records. Now, I know Suffocation and Of the Dark Light caused a little bit of a divide, you could say, in 2017 with the release of this album. This was an album that, in a lot of people's eyes in the death metal world, that this was like the disappointment of last year, personally, especially with the likes of Pinnacle of Bedlam and regarding to the old classic Suffocation albums. This one, people felt that there wasn't a lot to offer with it, and it took a little bit of, as people say, a deathcore kind of direction and vibe in there, that it just killed Suffocation for them. And for all, I understand completely that there is a lot of death metal fans, me not included, who don't like deathcore at all. Like, they resent the style completely, and they just they don't appreciate if bands take a little bit of spice from that sort of style. I mean, Dying Fetus have done it on the, I think it was the Reign Supreme album. They took a bit of deathcore influence, and people weren't really enjoy that as much. But I'm going to express my opinions on this album today, and I can straight away say this was, as I said, going to be in my honorable mentions, and that in its right just says to you, from my perspective, that I do enjoy this album. And this obviously might come from a bit of a perspective and the fact that I love me death metal and me deathcore. Obviously love me death metal that's slightly a little bit more, but that's because it's always been my favourite genre in music in general. But deathcore is not far behind. But in my personal opinion, I can see there's a little bit of a deathcore vibe in some of the slam breakdown-y kind of parts in there, but for me in general, I don't think this is really anything that you can reference to deathcore, because this is Suffocation, in my opinion, still doing what Suffocation have done for many years, and especially over the past couple of years, creating their own style, being the New York style of brutal death metal, whatever you want to reference it, which in modern times has took its influences from a little bit of deathcore and a bit of slam in there to create the New York style sound. But in my personal opinion, when I first heard this album, I was not disappointed in the slightest. I think this album, as a whole production value, I think it's definitely the cleanest and most clear sounding production of Suffocation's discography. And I thought, personally, Pinnacle of Bedlam was the most clarified release that they've done so far. There was a lot of definition in the notes. The chugs sounded really huge and bright, and sounded it doesn't sound as heavy as, say, for example, Blood Oath did, or Despise the Sun, or what's the album called? Well, let's just say the past early works like Effigy of the Forgotten and all that. Obviously, all those albums up to Blood Oath had a bit of a old school kind of production that still kept the meat and the chunk behind it. But for these past two albums, it's really been a very clear production. Whereas I think this one is definitely the most clear and a little bit more of an accessible start to Suffocation, if you ask me. This is something, in my opinion, if you're not really massively into the old school sound, then maybe this and Pinnacle of Bedlam could be a good way to start off to get into the old school sort of stuff. I mean, I started with Blood Oath, for example, but anyway. So yeah, and obviously you've still got your catchy parts that Suffocation has been known for over the years. You got your fast parts, you've got your slammy, breakdowny kind of like heavier, chunky parts where it just drops, it hits you really hard, especially on the songs, excuse me, Clarity Through Deprivation, which is easily my favourite song on this album, because when I heard that song live, oh my god, it just hits so hard, that breakdown. But yeah, also, I think it's Return to the Abyss, and, Your Last Breaths, and Of the Dark Light, the title track, all, in my opinion, offer their really heavy, slammy part. That, going back to it, I still think it does reference a little bit in deathcore, and that doesn't take anything away from the album, in my perspective, anyway. The guitar work is still along the lines of what you could expect from Suffocation, especially along the lines of Pinnacle of Bedlam, with the a lot of clarity in there, and the solos. Terence Hobbs is an absolute monster of a lead guitar player and an amazing riff writer. His lead work is chaotic as hell. You could see it in a bit of a Slayer sort of essence, where it's noisy, it's chaotic, and just obnoxious as hell. It's an obnoxious type of guitar playing that he does, and it's quite a signature sort of sound to it that I think, if you listen to it, you know exactly that it's Terence Hobbs doing those crazy whammy effects, and just creating just disgusting, putrid noises just over these dark, heavy, as if end of the world kind of vibed riffs. They just feel so chaotic, and the riffs sound like fucking Armageddon, if you ask me. The guitar work on this album, I don't think it's as and drum work clarified in, or locked into one. I don't think it's as chaotic as Pinnacle of Bedlam, but I think it offers a lot more groove and a bit more, a little bit more of an easier access to the Suffocation sound. So if people thought Pinnacle of Bedlam was a bit more chaotic and a bit too much for them, then this one kind of eases it back a little bit and just gives it a bit more accessibility, but it still sounds crushing as hell. The bass tone on this album is very, very clunky and just pounding bass tone. It's not like really rumbly as it has been on previous Suffocation albums. It's really a lot of clarity. It echoes through the production, kind of along the same sort of lines of what you would find with like a Cannibal Corpse kind of album, with that kind of Alex Webster kind of tone. It really cuts through the mix. So while it feels sharp, it feels rich, especially on the re-recording of their song Epitaph of the Credulous, I believe that's how it's pronounced, which was from their previous album from 1993 called Breeding the Spawn. That one, to me, absolutely amazing re-recording. I've heard the original, obviously, and this one is just sounds a lot more clean, a lot more modern, if you ask me. And finally, we get to the vocals. Now, obviously, in light of recent events, obviously Frank Mullen is going to be stepping down from Suffocation as the vocalist, and what can I say personally? I think he's left a real mark on the scene with his iconic, obviously, you can't forget that, his tongue action, whatever you want to know him by, but you'll always know him for his monstrous lows that he's done over the years, and his monstrous lows on this are just so powerful. They're just so signifying. Frank Mullen is one of the leading voices in death metal, in American death metal, in death metal, and in metal in general. You'll know Frank Mullen from his voice, just low, monstrous, and just, he's absolutely amazing, if you ask me. And on this album, his vocals definitely echo very, very well, if you ask me. And one thing I do like to point out is, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I think it's Kevin Mullen, I believe that's his name. He does a lot of backing vocals. I think he's a part of a band called The Merciless Concept, I believe he's from. He's been doing guest vocals, like live vocals in Europe and stuff like that. And he's got his own vocal performance on this album as like backing vocals and stuff like that, and in my personal opinion it adds so much depth and a bit more aggression. It does add the kind of deathcore vibe that I've seen a few reviewers say that it adds to this album, and in my personal opinion I don't think you should think about it like that. I think you should think, does this add more to the overall Suffocation sound? And I think it personally does. I think as a whole it just adds a lot more low end and a bit more depth to the vocals. It just gives it a bit more variety. It kind of gives us a bit of a vibe of Despised Icon, where the dual low vocal action comes in, where you can definitely hear a difference, but they're both monstrous and they're both sound crushing as hell. Could this be the end of Suffocation? I don't think so at all. But what is next for Suffocation when it comes to vocals? I don't know. I know the guy from who does drums for Disgorge nowadays. I believe he does drums for Disgorge. Is now doing live vocals for Suffocation. So I don't know what the lineup's going to be like. Is he going to be the new vocalist? Is Kevin going to be the new vocalist? Whatever. But we'll see what happens in the upcoming future. All will be revealed after, I guess, Frank does his final tour of the US, and I hope that he comes to the UK and does a final tour, because I just love to stand there and just see him just going like that. I'm just like, you're my hero. Anyway, but for an overall score though, I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as what people made it out to be. I think this was a real delight to listen to. It was fun, enjoyable, and in my opinion, the deathcore-ish elements really added to this album. What do you think? I know there was a lot of people who were let down by this album, but leave some comments down below of what you actually think. Do you think the deathcore elements ruined this album, or what other parts ruined this album for you, or do you think the same as me? This was a really solid album, and I have to say this is one of my favourite Suffocation albums. I know that's a bit of a sin to say that probably to most people, but like, you're not a true Suffocation fan. But whatever, 8 out of 10 I'm going to give it. I really enjoy this album. I think it's really solid, and it's been on repeat lately, and quite frankly, I love the artwork as well, so yeah. And I might as well add, excuse me, it was an absolute honour back in August last year to support Suffocation at Riverside in Newcastle. And I think that might be one of the reasons why I love this album, because it holds a bit of a soft spot to me, because every time I pick this CD off my shelf and look at that artwork, and I'm just sitting there at my computer just like, yep, that was a good gig. And quite frankly, it was an amazing gig. Obviously Frank not being there, it was unfortunate, but Kevin did an absolutely monstrous job. They were one of the tightest bands I think I've ever seen in my life live, and I hope one day I get to see Suffocation, and it would be nice to see one more time Frank fronting the band. I mean, it would be nice to see Frank doing it one more time, you know what I mean? But yeah, I hold a soft spot for this album. And one more courtesy, also my band, if you haven't checked us out, link down below, Erebor. We've got our debut album coming either later this year or in next year. But yeah, more information on that in the upcoming future. But make sure you check out Suffocation of the Dark Light. If you haven't checked it out and you're just following the hype and people saying like, oh, it was terrible, just give it a chance. I think personally, if you're into a death metal with a bit more of a variety, a bit more of a deathcore kind of influence in there, then definitely check out this album. I think it's solid, heavy, and absolute crushing. Definitely check out the songs Clarity Through Deprivation, Your Last Breaths of the Dark Light, and their re-recorded version of Epitaph of the Credulous. I believe that's how it's pronounced. That's obviously from the Breeding Spawn? Yeah, Breeding the Spawn. Yeah, so make sure you check out Suffocations of the Dark Light. And I'll see you until the next video. And remember, stay metal, and I'll see you later.